I've got some questions concerning mothers and some responses that have been given. Why did God make mothers? And the answer, she's the only one who knows where the Scotch tape is. How did God make mothers? He used dirt, just like the rest of us. What ingredients are mothers made of? I got a couple of responses to this one. God makes mothers out of clouds and angel hair and everything nice in the world. And a dab of mean. The other answer to that, what ingredients are mothers made of? They had to get their start from men's bones. Then they mostly used string, I think. What's the difference between moms and dads? I like this one. I may hear from the dads next month at Father's Day, but anyway. Moms work at work and work at home. Dads just go to work at work. Got two more on that one, the difference between moms and dads. Moms know how to talk to teachers without scaring them. And one more on that one. Moms have magic. They make you feel better without medicine. I like that one. Another question. What does your mom do in her spare time? Answer. Mothers don't do spare time. What would it take to make your mom perfect? Diet. You know, her hair. I dye it blue. D-I-E-T. That's what it is. If you could change one thing about your mom, what would it be? Well, she has this weird thing about me keeping my room clean. I'd get rid of that. And then another response, I would like for her to get rid of those invisible eyes on her back. Yes, Mom. I have been greatly blessed to have a godly mother, to be brought up with godly parents. And not just on Mother's Day, but I like to reflect on that from time to time, because sometimes when you've been brought up in a godly home, we may take much for granted. Because there are many who have not. The home and the family have been under attack and homes are divided. Some grow up without a parent, without that care and concern. Any society, the core fundamental foundation of a society is the family. And if the family disintegrates, so does a culture, so does a nation. And I can't help but think many of the woes that we have in our nation is because the family has been under attack and has been split and divided in many ways. So if you have been fortunate like me to be brought up with a godly mom and a godly father, thank God for that wonderful blessing. Turn with me to the book of Exodus as we look at Jochebed, a woman of faith. Exodus chapter 2, we'll look at verses 1 through 8. Exodus chapter 2. Now a man from the house of Levi went and took as his wife a Levite woman. The woman conceived and bore a son, and when she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she took for him a basket made of bulrushes and daubed it with bitumen and pitch. She put the child in it and placed it among the reeds by the riverbank. And his sister stood at a distance to know what would be done to him. Now the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river, while her young woman walked by the side. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her servant woman, and she took it. When she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby was crying. She took pity on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call you a nurse from the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you?" And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." So the girl went and called the child's mother. Abraham Lincoln once said, "No man is poor who has had a godly mother." I like that. I like that. I think my life has been greatly enriched and blessed because of having a godly mother. One of the greatest gifts you can give your children is to be a godly parent. To be a godly parent. Briefly, I want to look at 6 things with regards to Jochebed, this woman of faith. First of all, her identity. She was a godly mother. And in Bible times, names usually had a meaning. Someone would name their child out of some quality that came to mind at the time of their birth, or some quality that they hoped that they would aspire to. And her name literally means, "God is my glory." I like that. Now, I've not encountered anybody in my lifetime whose name was Jochebed. Kind of an odd name. I have had people ask me from time to time for possible names as they're about to have a child. They're looking for names for their daughter or their son-to-be. And I sort of tongue-in-cheek give them some Bible names that are probably not going to be used. You know, maybe you ought to call your son Tiglath-Pileser or Sennacherib. You know, I haven't come across too many women named Delilah or Jezebel. A couple of bad girls in the Bible there. But there's some interesting names. But names had a meaning. Some of your names probably have a meaning. And maybe you know what the meaning of your name is. I'm not sure what Eddy even means, if it means anything. I do know, however, in growing up, if my mother said, because my legal name is Ronald Edward Jones, if I heard Ronald, it was time to go to the hills. I knew I was in trouble. So I always associated Ronald with trouble. So that's what that name means. But God is my glory. What a beautiful name. Kind of a neat catchphrase, isn't it? That we could maybe apply to our lives. When you get up in the morning, just say, "God is my glory." And maybe remind yourself from time to time during the day as one of His children that God is your glory. Be a neat thing to just pause and reflect on, just be reminded of. Maybe even say it out loud from time to time. God is my glory. Beautiful name. She was an Israelite of the tribe of Levi. Now all the priests for God came out of the tribe of Levi. So all priests were Levites, but not all Levites were priests. But she was from that tribe where the priests would come. And perhaps as a mother with a young son, she perhaps had in her heart and mind the aspiration, one day my son might be a priest of God. Little did she know at that time the plans God had for her son. A godly mother. Secondly, her dilemma. She lived in a very hostile environment. She had known only the curse of slavery. Her whole people had only known it for hundreds of years. She could have whined about it, but she didn't. And Pharaoh gave an order because the Egyptians were getting concerned because the Israelites were so many now that now there's a concern for revolt and so forth. And so they ordered these babies to be killed and thrown into the Nile River, which still to this day in places has crocodiles. I don't know if you've been up close to a crocodile, but I would not advise getting too close. I went to Gatorland in Florida not long ago, and they had a few crocodiles, but crocodiles are a lot more aggressive than an alligator. You don't want to get that close. But can you imagine? I wonder how many babies were thrown into the river and just gobbled up by crocodiles. Pharaoh gives this order. How many of the Hebrew women complied? We're not told. But I can't help but think that some did. But Jochebed, at peril to her own life, sought a way to try to save her son. So they were being cast into the Nile River. Well, she kind of partly complied. She just built a little ark, put the baby in it, and put it in the Nile. And had to turn him over to God, put him in God's keeping. We live in a hostile world today for godly people. Some places a lot more hostile than others. But even in our own country here, there's some animosity and opposition and some degrees of hostility that we may have to face just for being a godly person. At some point, we may have to take a stand, as some do in other places. Do I obey God or an evil law of the land? So I can't help but wonder. I wonder how many did comply. And I also wonder, surely Jochebed wasn't the only one who sought a way to try to save her son. 3 months old is Moses. How many other mothers with very young children, just babies even, would be willing to put their life at peril themselves to not follow that law if they're found out? I can't imagine just the heartbreak, the heartache, how that feels to know that your very precious child is in danger, regardless of age. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, moms, but they're always your precious child, even if they're 67 years old. Right? They're always your precious child. At least I think for a godly mother that's true. So there was a hostile environment. We've got to resist some of the evil pressures in this world. And that may take a stand. It may even be risking ourselves on behalf of our children. And if there's one thing I know, you do not get between a mother and her child in certain situations. I also know, and learned some time ago, when they have their babies, you do not go to the hospital and say, "Oh, he's ugly." That's not what a mom wants to hear. You're getting a tiger by the tail when you do that, you know, because it's the most beautiful child that ever existed. But in the back of my mind, I've seen a lot of babies. Bite your tongue. Don't say it. Remember years ago that craze, the Cabbage Patch dolls? My grandmother was making some of those. And I go in there and go, ugly. Ugly. No, you don't say that to a mom who just gave birth. Life is precious to God. And there's nothing ugly about it. Man. To just discount it. And how many, even today, are being killed and murdered? I think of abortion. Parents or mothers not thinking of their child, but thinking of self in some fashion. I still don't fully understand that. I have to acknowledge it exists. It's a truth. It's there. and the laws of the land allow it. Well, I could go down another rabbit trail on that topic. We might do that another time. But children are still at risk. Children are still at risk. Thirdly, her courage. She refused to go with the flow. Knowing that her own life could be forfeit, she seeks to defy the decree of Pharaoh himself. She knew the decree. She knew the baby's life would be forfeit. And by not following through, her life could be forfeit. But she still disobeyed. Fearing God over man was her priority. Regardless of what man can do to you. And man can do some pretty cruel things against you. Look what they did to Jesus. Cross. Number 4, her sacrifice. 3 months old, and she has to let go and give him up. 3 months. Michelle's in Texas right now visiting our newest granddaughter. And later this month she'll be 1 year old. She's sending me pictures. I said, you better send me pictures. I can't be there. She's been sending me pictures and telling me stories and things. She better be on that airplane Tuesday night getting back here. But she's having so much fun, I don't know, Precious child. I was showing the class I was in this morning the latest pictures. Okay, moms, how many of you have pictures? I think about every mom's hand went up. You got pictures too. How many of you dads? You can take something from this. Okay, next month I'm going to be asking. Father's Day. How many dads? Pictures. Why do we do that? Our pride and joy, right? Our children, our grandchildren. Great-grandchildren here. Somebody have great-grandchildren? We have some, maybe have great-greats. At least greats. Wow. Awesome. And you don't talk about them, do you? You don't show pictures, do you? Why do you do that? Because you are proud and you have love just overflowing. You want to tell them. But she had to give up her child at 3 months. She didn't fully understand, God, why are you allowing this evil to happen? But despite that, I still trust in you, and I'm putting my son in your hands and you're keeping. Basically, the choice was, do I put him in God's keeping or in Pharaoh's? She knew where Pharaoh's keeping would lead. Trying to save the precious life of her son, she had to give him up. I can't begin to imagine how a mother would feel. To save your child, you have to give him away, and in the moment thinking you may never see that child again. I can't begin to imagine the heartache. But she had to let go and let God in that life. I'm reminded of the passage in Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, to trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths. We don't understand some things, but we still have to trust in God. That's faith. Because if I understood everything, I wouldn't need faith. To trust even though you don't understand. And she showed that. Number 5, she trusted God with the protection of her child. God was able to work in this situation above and beyond even what she was hoping for. God does that sometimes. Sometimes He does a mightier work than even what we're thinking for and hoping for. Ephesians 3 talks about how God can do immeasurably more than what we even ask or imagine. Now, I don't know about you, but I can imagine quite a bit. Sometimes He goes even above and beyond that. She's thinking for the life of her son. We're going to find here in a moment God provides a lot more life than just for her son. Hebrews 11:6, without faith it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to Him must believe that He exists and that He rewards those who earnestly seek Him. Which brings us to number 6. What was her reward? It was life and deliverance. Life for her son. Life for her son that she wanted was secured. Moses goes from having a death sentence to becoming royalty. Overnight. Talk about God working quick. A death sentence to a royal position. Her son's life was secured. Her life was secured. She could still take care of him and get paid to do it. How many of you moms get a salary for taking care of your children? Talk to your husbands about that. And I'll hear it next month for Father's Day. No. She was blessed beyond what she asked. Just the safety of her son. And now she still gets to take care of him and gets paid to do it. But there was also life for more than just Moses and Jochebed. It was life for a nation. Because Moses would go on to lead the children of Israel out of slavery and bondage in Egypt. She had no idea what God had in store for her young child in that magnitude. For millions to be delivered from the bondage of the orders of the Pharaoh like this. I've always found it a bit ironic. Here Pharaoh gives the order to have all these babies killed, and his own daughter defies the order to save that child. And then that child was brought up like in the household of Pharaoh, like a prince. It's like Pharaoh's order came back to haunt him. Kind of ironic. So some concluding thoughts here as the praise team comes up. Her love, her faith, her courage saved her child from a cruel death and preserved his life so that he could bless a nation, and I would contend the world. Because the Messiah came out of that nation that had been in that bondage. A mother who loved her God, despite facing anguish over the possibility of her son dying, being killed. She was the chief influence in those early formative years for Moses, and God put a high call on his life that she wasn't even aware of at that point in time. She let go so God could place that call on the life of Moses. A couple of questions as we close. Are you trusting God today? Are you letting go and allowing God to work in your life? Moms, at some point, kind of starts a little bit maybe in the teenage years, but when they're leaving home, you've got to let go, don't you? And you want to entrust them into God's keeping. They grow up fast. Am I correct in that, Mom? They kind of grow up quick, don't they? Seems like just yesterday you remember them as that little baby. And now they're growing up so fast. Those of you that still have young children, don't take that for granted. Spend time with your children. Because they're not going to be children long. That's precious time. Let go. Entrust them into God's care and keeping. And who knows what high calling God may put on their life to affect many, many lives. Do you know Him as your God? As your Savior? Are you influencing others by living a godly life? Jochebed, by simply seeking to save the life of her son, had an impact on millions. Your godly life, moms, with just even one, may in turn impact many. Let go and let God. Let's stand as we sing.
Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, help me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. When my way grows drear, precious Lord, linger near. When my life is almost gone, hear my cry, hear my call. Hold my hand, lest I fall. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home.
Okay, just remain standing real quick. A couple of updates on some news and announcements. I'm not going to go through what's in the bulletin. Please read through those, but I do have an update on a couple. The adult class that usually meets at 4 o'clock Sunday afternoons, that one is suspended for this week. But the 6 o'clock class, the POW class group is meeting. It is still here, right?
That's correct.
Okay, here at 6. So no 4 o'clock class. If you want to come join the 6 o'clock bunch. They'll be here. Also, ladies, today is the deadline for the ladies' brunch this Saturday. The Hawaiian brunch. Put your registrations in the box. We have them in the back here, one in the fellowship hall. Or give to Carol Hines or Beverly White. If you find you can come Saturday but didn't sign up, come anyway and pay at the door. I think they have a couple of extras just in case. Michelle will be speaking, and I have a note here, handwritten for emphasis. Remember to wear your most colorful outfit. So go wild, ladies. You're having a luau. Okay, all my